and he thinks he will get rewarded just as much as his tahajjud. My brothers and sisters in Islam, the muhsin has a constant cycle of worship. Not the 5 prayers he looks at his watch and then goes back to work. That's the mu'min or the Muslim. The muhsin is conscious that Allah is watching him. And so every single step and deed that he does becomes an act of worship. Therefore, never trivialize any deed that you're doing. Never trivialize it. You do not know what Allah will accept from you. Remember the hadith of the prostitute. The Prophet ﷺ told us in Sahih Bukhari. He said, in the Bani Israel before you, there was a prostitute. A prostitute who walked by a well and saw a dog thirsty. So thirsty that the dog was licking the sand, trying to find some drops of water around the well. And so the prostitute felt some sympathy for the dog. So she went down into the well. She took her shoe and she took some water in it and she gave it to the dog to drink. The Prophet ﷺ said, because of this deed, he said, because of this deed, her sins were all forgiven. This one deed, her sins were all forgiven. We're talking about a prostitute who sells her body for a cheap price, for gold and silver coins. How many are the men she must have deluded? How many are the sins she must have accrued? And she sees now this filthy creature. Our Sharia considers the dog to be najis, like the pig. We're not allowed to own one except under dire circumstances. She sees this dog and she feels rahmah and sympathy for it. And she recognizes how sinful she is. And she is desperate for any good deed to save her. And so that consciousness of Allah, which allowed her to take out 30 seconds of her day and feed this dog, caused her for all of her sins to be forgiven. It is not the deed itself, a prostitute feeding a dog. It is the spirituality behind the deed. The consciousness that she must have had, realizing how desperate she is for Allah's mercy and forgiveness. And so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted this one deed from her. One deed. And because of it, forgave all of her sins. The moral of the story, O Muslims, never trivialize any good that you can do. Whatever deed that you do, surely inshaAllah we are better than the prostitute. Surely the good that we show is more than water to a dog. Surely then we have more right to be forgiven. But it is not the deed, as I said, it is the spirituality. It is the consciousness. So as you go about your daily lives, as you go about your cycle of life, see the opportunities that come knocking to you for the worship of Allah. And don't trivialize them. Understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indeed watching. And you never know which deed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept of yours. To conclude, let me rephrase the entire talk into 2 primary points. Summarize it in a different way. 2 primary points. Firstly, my brothers and sisters in Islam, be mindful of Allah throughout your day and night. And do not let your time become a monotonous routine of actions that you do, religious and secular. I have to pray at this time, I have to go to work at that time. No, don't do that. Don't fall into this mistake. Rather, aim for the level of ihsan, even though you might not be able to reach it fully. Inshallah, you might be able to reach it partially. Aim for the level of ihsan, which is the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And secondly, do not trivialize any good deed that you do. You do not know what that one deed will be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will like and forgive you because of it. One of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the famous scholars of the past, he said, if I knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had accepted only one prostration of mine that I have done throughout my life, one sajda, I would die optimistic of reaching Jannah. If I knew Allah accepted it, just one sajda, then Allah will accept it. That means He'll give me everything I want from that. Imagine now. And this is a person, he must have had thousands and hundreds of thousands of prostrations. And he says, if I only knew one of those was accepted. Don't trivialize any good deed that you do. And remember that the most rewarding of all deeds are the obligatory deeds, and the most beloved are the punctual ones. These are two hadith, different hadith. The most rewarding of all deeds are the obligatory deeds, the 5 prayers and the zakat and the fasting of Ramadan, the most rewarded. And the most beloved, as the Prophet ﷺ said, are those that are punctual. You always do them. So imagine now,